What I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct...
I think Democratic culture has too many preachy females. It's too much. Don't eat hamburgers. Don't watch football. All right. Wear condom. Like, man, shit, leave me alone. You okay? I got a goddamn life to lead. You know, guy works at a tire repair shop in suburban Atlanta. You had motherfuckers working 50 hours a week, you know, making $16.50 an hour. And he wants to watch the football game. He wants to smoke dope and drink beer. And then everybody's telling him he's slothful, and they reject that shit. And, you know, I just think some of it is cosmopolitan condensation, if you will. Like, you need to lead the kind of life we lead, not the kind of life you lead. And it pisses people off.
Well, that's across the board. That's black, white. That's a big part of Trump. That's a big part of Trump.
It's Hispanic. We're going to lose Hispanic males.
Yeah.
We're going to fucking lose them.
And that's on that male-female issue. That's on, I mean, you know, it very much, they want to see the strong, this is a generalization, but strong, dominant male in a household. I mean.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Now, on this channel, I talk primarily about wrestling, but from time to time, I do discuss politics. From time to time, I do discuss masculinity. And that's really what we're talking about today. Politics is just kind of entrenched in this subject at this point. But it's not the focus of it. But it will be a substantial amount of politics in this. So, the writer David French in the New York Times was upset about Hulk Hogan performing at the Republican National Convention. And he wrote an article entitled, "Hulk Hogan is not the only way to be a man." And at first I laughed at this because it was humorous. At first I chuckled because I thought it was ridiculous that you would even make this observation, considering we all know that this is true. And then I skimmed through it. And then I thought about what James Carville, who was a Democrat strategist, he made the news a couple of weeks ago for making the argument that the Democrat Party is just a bunch of preachy women. And then also J.D. Vance, the vice president, talked about the country being run by crazy cat ladies with no stake in the future. And I said, you know what? We really do need to have this conversation seriously. So we're going to go through this article, but we're also going to just kind of expand on it. So I'm going to try to not be my usual glib self. All right. So David French writes, quote, "If you ever wondered whether the Republican Party sees itself as the party of men, I'd invite you to watch last night's Republican National Convention. Primetime featured a rousing speech by the wrestling legend Hulk Hogan, a song by Kid Rock, and a speech by Dana White, the chief executive of the UFC, all as a warm-up act before Trump delivered his acceptance speech. Republican manliness was the capstone of the convention. But what kind of men were featured? They're all rich and powerful. And as a longtime fan of professional wrestling, I loved watching Hulk Hogan as a kid. But none of them are the kind of man I want my son to be. White was caught on video slapping his wife. Kid Rock has his own checkered past, including a sex tape and an assault charge related to a fight in a Nashville strip club. Hogan faced his own sex scandal after he had a bizarre relationship with a woman who was married to one of his close friends, a radio host who goes by the name Bubba the Love Sponge." So, just pause right here. All of this is true. These are very flawed individuals. Dana White, Kid Rock, Hulk Hogan. but I think you'll be hard-pressed to find any man who is not flawed. I think you'll be hard-pressed to find any man who perfectly represents the kind of man you would want your son to be. If that's going to be the standard, then you're going to be looking for, you should be the kind of man you want your son to be, for starters. But you're going to be looking pretty far away. Now, there's some really pathetic stuff in here that I'm going to read. And I'm going to try not to laugh when I read it. But we'll get there. I just want to pause here to say that every man, no matter who he is going to have some flaw. And the only reason you're bringing up these flaws is because of political advantage. So, let's continue in his article. He says later, for a brief period last week, I thought Harris might answer the Trumpists with a man who puts to shame every person who took stage that night. She was reportedly considering Admiral William McRaven, a Navy SEAL, a former commander of U.S. Special Operations Command, and one of the key architects of Operation Neptune Spear, the mission to kill Osama bin Laden, as a potential running mate. He quickly pulled himself out of consideration, saying that, quote, there are far better candidates for the position. Politically, he was probably right. Real politics requires picking a politician who can help carry key swing states. But McRaven still matters. His ideas matter. His comportment and bearing matter. What he says matters. And Democrats should embrace McRaven's conception of how to live as a direct contradiction of Trumpist masculinity. Now, I didn't know who William McRaven was before I reading this article. So I quickly went and did some digging on him. I didn't do too much digging. He mentioned a speech in here where William McRaven says for you to make your bed. And I went and I didn't watch the whole speech. The whole speech was 20 minutes. I watched 2 clips. And I didn't see anything in it that was offensive. Matter of fact, I thought it was actually pretty good. I did see people claiming that McRaven was anti-Trump, which to me doesn't matter. I saw that he was pro-Black Lives Matter. But there was nothing in the context of that comment that led me to believe that he is Black Lives Matter in terms of he believes in the national organization. This is where you have to be smart. There is Black Lives Matter in terms of, is he a racist that thinks black people's lives don't matter? No. And then there is Black Lives Matter, the organization that wants to destroy the family, and it's started by 3 lesbian Marxists. I'm almost certain he is not going to be pro-Black Lives Matter in terms of the national organization run by 3 lesbian Marxists who stole millions of dollars for black people. Almost positive he is not on that. I saw that he was promoting climate change, which there's a lot of Republicans who also promote climate change, whatever. But I didn't see anything that was too radical. But then again, I only did a cursory look. I didn't go deep dive on this guy. But William McRaven seems to be a straight up, military guy. Take care of the small things that you can control. Set yourself up for success for the rest of the day by making your bed. It paralleled nicely with the Jordan Peterson clean up your room. Funny how Jordan Peterson tell people to clean up their room. That the Democrats actually lost their minds. Because Jordan Peterson, for a while there, before he cracked up, his audience was mostly disaffected males. And you would constantly see Republicans and people on progressives attacking him just for having a male audience. And now here they are saying that, William McRaven could be our Jordan Peterson. Well, really what they wanted to do is turn this guy into a Trojan horse. You find a guy who looks great in a uniform. He's got all the credentials that a regular everyday Republican or straight up normal guy would appreciate. Again, Navy SEAL. And then you turn him into a propaganda machine. You use him to say all the right things. Go out there and talk about climate change. And, while you got all those medals on his lapel, make sure he's got a pride flag there too. And I think we're too deep into the culture war for that to work. We've seen athletes of all stripes. We've seen movie stars. We've seen everybody that you could possibly pull carry a pride flag or preach about Black Lives Matter or preach about climate change. It doesn't influence people anymore. At this point, everybody sees that it's propaganda and it's not going to work. The hicklib, which is the Southern boots and cowboy hat liberal who sounds just like he's from New York or from San Francisco. You probably have heard this from people like Razor Fist, who talk about this a lot with the new Westerns that have been on television, where all of a sudden, these good old boys from the South, they sound just like New York liberals. It's called being a hicklib. And again, it's a way of getting the aesthetic that middle America and poor people will appreciate, but forcing them to actually just parrot the talking points of the coastal elites. And everybody knows that at this point. You're not going to be able to get away with it. And one thing that I do like about McRaven is that he was smart. Apparently he didn't want anything to do with that because that's what this is. Kamala Harris, I'm not too concerned with her. She's an empty suit. She changes her opinions depending on what, she puts her finger in the air. Oh, tough on crime because that's where the way the wind blowing. Soft on crime because that's where the wind blowing. Universal health care because that's what the way the wind's blowing. None of this stuff matters. And a lot of the Democrats are kind of like that. They're interchangeable. It's party politics, not, it's a machine. It's not necessarily anything about the individual. But he was smart to back away from this and just say, basically, you guys need to handle that yourselves. So that was smart. Let's get back into this article, however. It says it's not just McRaven, of course. There are other good and brave men who have rejected MAGA. Whether I'm speaking of Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, a former fighter pilot and astronaut, or Mark Hertling, my former division commander in Iraq, who was a Biden appointee to the American Battle Monuments Commission, and a leading proponent of Ukraine's cause, or James Mattis, a former Secretary of Defense who did his best to serve Trump honorably, but could not abide Trump's disloyalty to our allies. But I highlight McRaven for a reason. He has perfectly articulated how to attack MAGA masculinity. 10 years ago, he gave one of the most powerful commencement speeches in recent American history. He addressed the graduates of the University of Texas, and 3 YouTube versions have wrapped up more than 70 million views combined. It's known, oddly enough, as the Make Your Bed speech. While it wasn't aimed only at men, every person who afforded it to me was a man. It appealed to universal values, but it connected with men I know at a deep and profound level. McRaven draws on his SEAL training to teach students how to change the world. It begins with the small things, like accomplishing that tiny first task of making your bed, because, quote, if you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. Yes, that's the exact same principle Jordan Peterson came up with when he said, clean up your room. Organize your own space and organize your own life before you start trying to change the world. That's good. That's really good advice, regardless of who it comes from. How is it that David French was able to find McRaven's quote and think that it was very useful, skipping over that Jordan Peterson had become extremely popular for essentially the same message? Interesting. But Jordan Peterson found himself in the bottom of a bottle of pills eventually, through a tremendous amount of stress, him having to protect himself from people lying about him constantly, people running his name through the mud, his wife getting sick. They pretty much destroyed him, and he has reemerged as some kind of Batman villain, which, is not helping his cause. But we're going to continue with David French's article saying, quote, each new principle is rooted in his experience, including, quote, if you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. Here's one that particularly salient in the face of Trumpist bullying. If you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. This is an interesting argument because the Democrats threw away the male vote a really long time ago. Several years ago, over 10 years ago, you cannot promote feminism and masculinity at the same time. These two things are diametrically opposed to each other. It is not diametrically opposed to women, because women benefit tremendously from masculinity. They benefit more from masculinity and patriarchy than they do from feminism. They don't believe that, but they do. In this instance, this guy is basically saying Trump is a bully. Well, Trump isn't the one that is using the power of the federal government to destroy another person's life. As far as I know, I mean, pretty much everybody in the government has the authority to do so. But the entire structure of the state of New York, there was a politician that ran specifically on destroying his life. There was a feminist prosecutor in Georgia that ran on destroying Donald Trump's life. Donald Trump, the same guy who used to partner with Jesse Jackson, all of a sudden is the most virulent racist in the country just because he's a Republican, which is, again, humorous if they wanted to be honest, but these people are devoid of honesty. Let's get back to this article. It said, the address builds to a conclusion that is alien to Trumpist masculinity. Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generation that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. Yes, there is nothing in this that is alien to people who support Donald Trump. Pretty much everybody has an idea of you do need to get some people to help you out. One of McRaven's speeches, he says that in order for a boat to move, everyone has to paddle, which is facts. You know, you're not going to get anywhere if certain people refuse to help. The difference in this situation is it is often the Democrats who are okay with certain people not helping. They give them 100 excuses why they can't paddle, why they can't do their own part. They allow people to freeload on the system and then are surprised when the system is clogged and when the system stops working. When you push, a certain agenda that have full-bodied, well-adjusted adults on some kind of welfare system, because it's better for them to be on welfare than it is for them to go and find a job. Everybody must paddle. Everybody has to do their own part. Except we're going to continue to cut out more people who don't have to paddle, who don't have to do their own part. And they can just coast on the system. Well, then if everybody stops paddling, where's the boat going to go? I'm just using McRaven, and I just watched this one speech, and I got it. I get it. I 100% understand it. And it's true. This is why we say we need to get rid of a lot of these entitlements. There's very few people who can't take care of themselves in our society. People who have severe mental illness, people who are severely old and infirm, and babies. That's pretty much it. Or somebody who has an IQ that is so low that they can't do basic tasks. Most people in our society can do something to take care of themselves. But we have one particular party who keeps coming up with excuses why certain people can't work, why certain people shouldn't have to work, that working should be optional. And those people have the levers of power, and they also have cities that are full with drug addicts and homeless and people pooping in the streets. Everybody must paddle. That includes your favorite drug addicts. That includes, your lower class blacks and minorities, etc. You can't have people just show up, get money, and do nothing. That destroys the system. It destroys the trust in the system. It creates animosity in the people who do work all day, come home tired, and they can barely afford food. versus somebody who sat around for 30 days, got a nice influx of cash, and now they're eating steak and shrimp. That's the problem in our society. And that's a problem that the Democrats don't have a problem with. But other people do. Everybody must paddle. Okay. I think I said enough. Let's move on to the next part of his article. He says, you can see the contrast. Trumpist masculinity is rooted in grievance and anger. McRaven's message centers on honor and courage. There's a seductive quality to Trump's masculinity. Grievance is a form of counterfeit purpose, and anger is a form of counterfeit courage. For a time, your grievance can give you a mission, fighting the hated foe. And when you're in the midst of an online temper tantrum, taking on all comers in your social media feed, you can feel a little bit brave, even if all you're doing is tapping out vitriolic posts from the safety and comfort of your couch. Now, there is a lot of right-wing, red pill guys that this applies to them. All they do really all day is snipe at women through social media. And I don't necessarily appreciate that. I think that it's not really helpful. It's a good way to get engagement because it does get a lot of attention. But to say that the Republicans are the party of grievance and anger is stupefying, because not only is it hypocrisy, but you have told us that grievance and anger is good. Now, what I'm guessing here is he's going to try to say grievance and anger from a masculine perspective is bad. But grievance and anger from a feminist perspective, where women are in the street screaming about abortions, they're screaming about, young men might get a program that is good for them and specifically for them. There was a program that Barack Obama was going to launch, and a bunch of black feminists screamed at him until he shut it down. Why? I thought grievance and anger was not a good thing until you actually support riots, which are based on grievance and anger, and you support the graffiti of public monuments out of grievance and anger. When most of your politicians are unintelligent and yelling into a microphone with their fist in the air, Marxist platitudes about equity and inclusion, no one says, hey, what you're doing in terms of grievance and anger is inappropriate and it's not helpful. Everyone just feeds into it. There's this belief that if you're on the left, then your grievance and anger is valid. Your grievance and anger is purposeful. It's righteous. But no, it's not. Nobody takes you seriously. Most of you sound stupid. And I just don't take this critique seriously when the Democrats are the party that absolutely has to promote a black woman to the Supreme Court because inclusion, and because there's going to be people who are going to cry and whine and stomp their feet if you don't. The reason why Kamala Harris even got in this position is because there is a boule of certain people who have stomped their feet and threatened to whine and cry and vote for Trump if they did not get rid of Joe Biden. And there's a profound weakness in not standing for anything and just capitulating to people who engage in nothing but grievance and anger. Again, there is some people on the red pill Twitter who are Trump supporters who engage in the kind of behavior that David French is talking about. But there's far more feminists who engage in grievance culture and anger. And those people have the steering wheel when it comes to Democrat politics. Therefore, I just don't take this seriously. Let's continue. He says, when you center masculinity on grievance and anger rather than honor and courage, you attract men like Hogan and Kid Rock and White. Worse, this is how you mold the men in your movement. including men like Vance. I guess he means J.D. Vance. He says many conservatives rightly decry the way in which parts of the far left tend to use the word straight white male as a virtual epithet, as if there were something inherently suspect in the identities of tens of millions of men and boys. And if men feel that Democrats are hostile to them, they'll go where they feel wanted. The gender gap will become a gender canyon, and more men will embrace Trumpism because that's just what men do. Well, that is not a very good analysis of the situation. Men don't have to go and listen to Trump. So it's a false binary. What it is that people want to see you fail. If they see that you hate them for no good reason, they're going to give you a reason. If you have animosity and if you want to fight, that's right in the male wheelhouse. Most men love confrontation. That's why we like competitive sports. If you have decided to line up against us, well, then you don't get to pick what jersey we put on. If these people become libertarians or they become Trump supporting Republicans, what does it matter to you? You have already picked your team, and your team is the man-hating feminist movement. Okay, so if we pick our team and we decide to fight, this is what you wanted because you decided to fight us. We didn't decide to fight you. You picked the fight. You put the feminists out there had the law signed that makes it okay for women to basically just accuse men of crimes with no evidence. And it's treated as if it's legitimate only against certain males. See, Brett Kavanaugh and Donald Trump, well, they're obviously guilty. But if you have, let's say, Bill Clinton or Joe Biden himself, well, there is nobody that's going to look into those things. Nobody's going to look into whether Bill Clinton, who now Monica Lewinsky claims that she got raped by him because of the power dynamics. Nobody's going to look to throw Bill Clinton in jail or sue him or anything like that. Tara Reid claims that Joe Biden raped her 20 years ago. That was completely memory hold and nobody talked about it. It was hand wiped away. It never came up at any point in time ever. So these double standards that you created in your society, where some men are above the law, and then you complain about those men, even though those men are only above the law because they're Democrats. And then you have other men who are subservient to the law, and their lives must absolutely be destroyed. Because either A, they're just regular guys who aren't really paying that much attention, or B, they're worse. They're guys who dare to call themselves Republicans, and therefore they should get booted off of social media sites, banned from Reddit, banned from Twitter, kicked off Facebook, run off from the old version of Twitter, all sorts of things. Nobody cared when it was happening to normal guys. People only really started caring when it started happening to guys that they like. So don't give me this about this is just what men do. No. You picked a team and you decided to start a fight. So somebody picked an opposite team and they started to fight. There are some guys who are anti-feminist, but they're still not Trump supporters. They might just decide to vote Green Party, or they're going to vote Libertarian, or they're not going to vote at all, but they'll fight with you on chats and in Reddit or whatever. And guess what? I don't have a problem with those guys either. Let's get back into this article. He says, quote, "But that's the masculine equivalent of a sugar high. For solid food, look not to Hulk Hogan. Look to William McRaven. It's often said, and I generally agree, that politics is downstream of culture. But we also cannot ignore the cultural power of our politicians. We aren't simply electing women and men. We're electing role models." This is not the end of the paragraph, but this is one of the most pathetic things I've ever read. We're electing role models. Joe Biden is a role model. Kamala Harris is a role model. Ralph Northam was a role model. What was the name of that clown in California? Gretchen Whitmer is a role model. No, these people are not role models. They're human beings. They're not heroes. Like, I know that the left tends to, and the right does this too with Trump, but it's mostly memeing. They tend to do the sanctified thing with, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Barack Obama, where they basically, put them on a pedestal so high that they're basically gods and they're worshiping the state. Typically, Republicans don't typically do that. The Trump thing seems to be an aberration. Some people literally are putting Trump on the cross, and that's, wholly inappropriate. But it's not typically something you see people on the right do. You see this, we are electing role models, and these people are saints, and they're heroes, and they're basically gods. You see that on the Democrat side. But like I said at the start of this thing, you'll be hard-pressed to find somebody who didn't have flaws. These people are not role models. They're just not. And this is not what I want. I don't want a government of role models. I want a government that gets the hell out of the way, that lets me live my life the way that I want to live it, and allows me an opportunity to make as much as I can to leave it to my children when I eventually have some. Not one that seeks to steal from me, even in my grave, because they think that it'd be better equity. It'd be more inclusive if instead of me getting that job, my wife got the job. That it would be better for everybody if I paid 30 or 40% of my income to the state to be given to drug addicts and people who add nothing to society. I don't want that kind of government. That ain't the kind of government that's going to be further my personal agenda, nor is it good for the country in large numbers. It just doesn't work. So no, you're not electing role models. This is ridiculous. It's pathetic. It's one of the most pathetic things I've ever read, quite honestly. He says, quote, Trump has unquestionably been a role model for countless men. He has molded not just the policies, but also the ethos of the Republican Party. But America's men need different role models and a different ethos. I'm not the only person who sees this need. At The Atlantic, my friend Tom Nichols argues that men like Kelly, Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Governor Andy Beshear of... All right, I'm pretty much all these people are Democrats, right? So you're playing party politics. Are there no real men on the other side? By God. Let's think about that one for a second. Jeez. Oh boy. Let's get back into this thing. We're going to skip forward a little bit. He said, but let's return for the moment to the Navy SEAL who served his country for decades, who helped kill one of America's deadliest foes, and who declared to American college graduates, quote, you must have compassion. You must ache for the poor and disenfranchised. You must fear for the vulnerable. You must weep for the ill and infirm. You must pray for those who are without hope. You must be kind to the less fortunate. I don't think anybody you talk to will have a problem with anything said there. The issue isn't the words that he's using. It's your perception of those words. You're reading that the government has to step in and save everybody's life when charity exists. People do these things voluntarily. And there's a lot of people who think that's the better way to do it. I am one of those people. Back to the article. And he's talking about McRaven, by the way. Back to the article. When I heard those words, I thought, that's the message American men need to hear. That's a message the American people need to hear. This might sound strange, but I wonder if Democrats should answer the Republicans' men's night with a men's night of their own. A night that features heroes instead of bullies and showmen. A night that answers the Republican appeal to men's basest instincts with an appeal to their highest. Okay, sure, do that. Go out there and show me that you can scratch up enough men like McRaven to... Again, I'm trying to be very mature here. Go ahead, scratch up as many men as you can. The moment I see a pride flag, the moment I hear Black Lives Matter or I hear some nonsense about climate change, I already know those men are bought and paid for. Your agenda is way too deep into everything. I cannot take it seriously. I can't take your party seriously. Even if you wanted to appeal to men, you have nothing but hick libs and soldier billboards. It means nothing. Sure, Hulk Hogan is just a symbol. I said this in my video. Hulk Hogan isn't legitimate. He's full of shit. He's 80s Americana for middle America. He appeals to that demographic that Trump wanted. That's why he was out there. And he's friends with Donald Trump. He's a caricature of what American men are and what they could be. But they want heroes. They want people who stand up in the face of danger. The moment somebody puts on a pride flag, they're not standing up in the face of danger. They're playing the game. Because if you don't put on the pride flag, you're not going to get invited to the party. If you don't support the Black Lives Matter regime, you're not going to get invited to the party. The issue here is you've created a great deal of enemies that represent a broad swath of Americana. The Democratic Party is becoming more and more niche by its own design because they put out so much offensive material, offending women, offending Jews, offending black males to a great degree, much further than I even thought. It's worse than I thought when it comes to black males, Hispanic males. You're changing the entire Spanish language. You're changing the English language because you think that, well, the women in our community, because everything is a community with Democrats, they don't like the word women, so we're going to put women with an X, women with the Y. You have people now with their pronouns in an email. They're saying now they're not calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. They're calling each other partners. I'm trying to find my person. This is what James Carville was talking about. You have mangled language through the cat lady syndrome of all of these women who have nothing else to do but to sit around and police thought. So now I already know. The moment somebody comes out there and they're afraid to call their wife, they're afraid to say that a man in a dress is not a woman, men cannot get pregnant, they're mangling their speech where they're saying, calling he's, hers, and hers, hims, and supporting abortion and a bunch of other stuff, you're at that point infected. It's basically you're a zombie. All right. And you could put as many medals on his lapel as you want. And I'm inoculated against it. I don't care if you find the coolest dude I ever thought was the coolest dude of all time. The moment you pick him out of a lineup and you say, here, go on stage and promote everything that Rachel Maddow also promotes, I know that you're not serious. I know that it's a game that you're playing with me. And I'm old enough to know better. Now, I would imagine that a lot of this stuff is trying to influence younger men. Hey, they got, Hulk Hogan. Maybe we can get John Cena. Maybe we get John Cena on stage to, throw his hat into the crowd at the Democratic National Convention and put on a Kamala Harris shirt. That will be the same thing for the new generation. Not that old racist Hulk Hogan, but the commie lover John Cena. That's how you counter it. But it doesn't matter because everybody knows that once whoever you pick says the key phrases of the agenda, they already know that they're brainwashed or they're being bought off. Either way, it's just as bad. Your position, your party is so infested with mind virus that it's off-putting regardless of who you put out there. I was a big fan of Jim Brown. All right. Jim Brown had some radical race ideologies. He did. But he was a straight up dude. Didn't have to agree with him on everything, but I knew I wasn't going to disagree with him on everything. All right. Most people You agree with them on stuff, you disagree with them on stuff. And you hope that you agree with them on more things that you disagree with them on. That way you can maintain some kind of relationship. You can maintain a line of dialogue. But the Democratic Party is at the point where the only people who listens to them are other Democrats. They literally speak a language that only they understand. And so they're out of touch. James Carville is 100% correct. You're out of touch. Nobody's listening to you. These regular dudes who just want to watch football while you're trying to get football banned. You have the NFL now pushing flag football programs because you have all of the cat ladies, who some of them who did have kids, are pulling their sons out of football. I don't want my son to have CTE. So now the NFL is going to have to push a flag football program because, well, there's not enough boys playing football anymore. Because, well, we've scared all the moms into taking the boys off the football team. We've got fight racism in the end zone in the NFL because that's important. And something that is empty, pointless. We got pride flags all over everything. This stuff is a virus. It's literally in a coded language to tell people when you see this stuff, it's because we're with the Democrats. And therefore, you're going to have a hard time finding a man who votes Democrat that other people are going to respect. Especially a man who is kind of jaded, kind of pissed off. Even if he doesn't like Andrew Tate, he's not about to sit here and be lectured by some male feminist who think men can get pregnant. It's just not going to happen. All right? And you're not going to be able to split the baby and say, well, it's individual liberties. It's like, nah, you believe men can get pregnant. Get out of here. You know, once you say those words, men can get pregnant. See, if you don't say it, you can't be on the Democrat ticket. They're going to kick you off. So the moment you do say it, it's over for you. Now everybody else knows that you have the virus and we're not going to touch you. We don't want anything to do with you. So let's finish this up. This is the last paragraph here. He says, when Vance says, our people hate the right people, that's the language of grievance and anger. But there is a better way for men, for all of us. It's rooted in honor, courage, and love. As our McRaven puts it, for what hero gives so much of themselves without caring for those they are trying to save? Okay, this is the end of the article for the most part. And I like this quote from McRaven. For what hero gives so much of themselves without caring for those they are trying to save? But J.D. Vance is more the voice of the time, I think you could say. McRaven's, his quote is good. It's great. It's sensible. It's a good heroic quote. You obviously care about people if you're willing to put your life on the line for them. But once they have shown nothing but utter contempt for the sacrifices that you have made, you should show contempt back. There's a thing that is obvious that is becoming more and more of a problem over time. That the American military was made up mostly of white boys from Middle and Southern America. The same kind of demographic that Trump wants to, attach himself to. And those people are becoming less and less interested in being soldiers. Why? Well, because they're seeing more DEI stuff. So they're bringing in more women, which of course is a distraction. Also, they get favorite nations in terms of promotions and things like this. They're trying to trans the military. They got trans people all up in the military. They're paying for trans surgeries in the military, all this stuff. And, they're also doing this with the Secret Service. This is how we got a woman who was, she worked at Frito-Lay or, something, who ended up guarding the president. It was very weird. Because of these practices, you have shown such contempt towards the people who want to sacrifice for the country that you have left them with nothing. These guys who would have willingly put on the uniform, gone and fight whoever you told them to fight because they believed in the country, you have told them that they are the worst people in the country, that they're angry and they're bitter for no good reason. They're all mediocre. And now they say, well, I'll just stay at home. I'll just stay at home and do drugs. How about that? I'll just stay at home. I'll do drugs. I'll collect all that welfare that you guys are giving away. I'll destroy my body for myself, not for this country. And so now there's eventually going to be a crisis of soldiers. This is why they started talking about bringing back the draft. And this kind of went under the radar too. This was under the Biden administration. They were trying to slip in some words for the draft. They want to start drafting people again because you've destroyed the patriotism in the young men who are going to fight for the country. You told them that they're irrelevant. You did that. So why should somebody take up the cause of being a hero for a country that hates them? It's common sense. And then you keep winning elections. And then you, of course, rule every major American metropolitan area. So if you're a good old country boy, you know, the next big city near you is full of Democrats who want you to go off and die, but they think you're worthless otherwise. If you're black, the only thing you're good for is going out there getting shot by the cops, because then we can protest and get money off you. So if you're a white boy, go get shot in Iraq or Afghanistan for our cause so that we can promote pride over there. If you're black, go get shot in the face in the hood by a police officer so that then we can go and collect money for our feminist causes over here. And you're Hispanic, I'm not sure what they're doing with the Hispanics yet. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Maybe you'll get shot and they'll use you as an excuse for more illegal immigration. Your life is nothing but sacrifice. And the first thing you have to realize if you want to appeal to men is that their lives actually matter. You're not just here to take bullets for people. You're not here to jump in front of bullets for random girls. You're not here to just take bullets for your country. You're not just here to take bullets from each other for your gang, for your street corner. Your life matters. You need to go out there and actually have a goal and try to achieve it. That's what those men want. Those men look at a guy like a William McRaven and say, man, he's got all these medals. He's got to be a distinguished guy. I would love to be like him. But the military that made him does not exist anymore. That military that promoted somebody like William McRaven, that military is gone. That military doesn't exist anymore. The military now has a man in a dress he looks like a thumb with lipstick on. That's the military they're asking you to go fight in now. And all of these people are saying no. No. You have a deep crisis of masculinity on the left. You have a deep crisis, and that's because you have shown nothing but hatred for it for like the past 20 or 30 years. I mean, it is what it is. It has nothing to do with Hulk Hogan. You can blame Hulk Hogan all you want. It ain't him. Hulk Hogan is a character. All right? But he symbolizes something that no longer exists. People who have pride in their country, people who are religious, people who are promoting family and good values, even though Hulk Hogan himself fell short of those. Those were the things his character was promoting. You want to bring in a real life version of that, and that's fine. But they have no mechanism for achieving all the things that William McRaven achieved. The military that created William McRaven does not exist anymore. There's a ton of guys who are former Marines, former Navy SEALs, floating around on social media with podcasts, and they're telling young men to go and hit the gym, get up at 3 a.m. and start doing 50 push-ups and all this kind of stuff. And guys will listen. They'll get up and they'll do it. But they're not doing it for their country anymore. They're not going into that system. They're not going to volunteer their body to a country that has shown them nothing but contempt for at least the past 20 years. They're not going to do it. People are smarter than you think. They're not as easy to brainwash as you think. Some people are going to be so bad off, so hard up, that they will sign up for the military, even knowing that they're going to have to go in there and combat all this crazy DEI, stuff. They know that. And they're willing to, hey, I'm in such a bad situation, I ain't got no choice. But people who have a choice, people who have a future, they're not going to do it anymore. They're not going to do it. And they're also not going to let you draft their sons into it. They're not going to let you do that either. But it goes to show that the Democratic Party realizes now they backed the wrong horse. That they got all these women, but none of the women are willing to accept responsibility for anything. None of them are willing to fight for anything. And that they need men. And and now the men are just looking at them like, well, some of them are easy to bring back. Just got to stop doing what you're doing. But there's going to be a lot of other men who are going to say, nah, you have done so much irreparable damage to my psyche as a male, treating me like crap in public schools for decades. We're putting young boys on SSRIs just because they are busybodies now, pumping boys full of pills from childhood. No. If I had a son, I wouldn't do it. My dad, who is a Marine, asked me why I didn't go into the military. I said, well, it wasn't that bad back when I probably would have gone, which would have been in the early 2000s. But I'm glad I didn't go, because I would be ashamed of the military today. I would be ashamed to have been associated with the crazy crackpot shit that is coming out of the military today. I would be ashamed of it. I would be offended by it. So thankfully, I didn't do it. And I know that there are some people out there who are saying, hey, it's okay, man. It's not that big a deal. Great. But I'm saying for me, I would have been offended. I would have been pissed. Because this is not the country I would have fought for. When I went out there, you know, in the hot heat and the sun of Iraq or whatever, sweating my balls off, worried about landmines, just to come home and be told that you're toxically masculine for wanting to have a job and a wife to have children. No, that's ridiculous. The life that every man before you led is now unattainable, and you are a misogynist for wanting that. You want to have a wife and children in 2024? You want to be heterosexual? You want to actually say that your wife needs to actually be female? What are you, some kind of bigot? Who thinks like this? You know? You want to actually own a house? What are you talking about? You shouldn't want to own a house. You should be okay living in a tent on the street. You want to have a steak? Ew. Cows produce gases, and that stuff goes into the atmosphere. You know, like, who the hell wants to deal with that kind of politics in their life every step of every moment of your life from this point forward, from how you interact with women? You can't even talk to women anymore. I mean, every conversation, you're concerned about power dynamics, whether you have to ask for consent. Can I send you a DM today? Is it okay if I send you a message today? Can I hold your hand? Is it all right if we kiss? Is it all right? And then all of a sudden that can all be revoked with a text message. Oh, I felt so very uncomfortable when... Come on, man. This stuff has gone too far. It's gone way too far. It's gone further than what Dave Carville was talking about. He's talking about just surface level, how the Democrats are interacting with men. It goes beyond that. Once you realize that you have 6 layers of government and bureaucracy laying on your chest every day, the moment you step in at your job, how you look, speak, and interact with women. If you talk to them too much, you're flirting. If you don't talk to them at all, that's discrimination. All this stuff, man, like, it's unreal. It's unreal. Who the hell wants to live? Who the hell wants to live through that? Let alone go out and fight and die for it. So if Democrats want to have men, well, you're going to have to try very hard. And you're going to have to reverse a good 15 years of your feminist policy and your feminist ideals. And you're not willing to sacrifice that, because then you're going to sacrifice the women. So no, you're going to lose out on a lot of men, especially the smart ones. The smart ones ain't even listening to you anyway. The rest of them, you're going to have to really pull the wool over their eyes. You're really going to have to need a really strong Trojan horse. Maybe somebody like Mick Raven. But again, the moment you put a pride flag behind them, the moment they say Black Lives Matter or climate change is real or a woman's right to choose, everybody's going to know he's paused. And I don't need to listen to him.
Want to change the world? Start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better.
Clean up your room. That's a good start. Organize your local landscape. Schedule your time. Start taking control of yourself. See if you can stop saying things you know to be lies. That's not the same as telling the truth. You don't get to do that to begin with because you're not good enough at it to even attempt it in some sense. But everyone can stop saying things they know to be falsehoods. They can use their own damn definition of falsehood. Stop saying things that violate your conscience. Here's another idea. Stop saying and doing things that make you feel weak. Just all you have to do is pay attention to that. Some things you do will make you feel disintegrated and weak. It's something that Carl Rogers commented on. Some things improve your integrity and some things disintegrate you. Now, the things that disintegrate you, you often do to impress other people, or because you're taking a shortcut, or you're escaping what you know to be your moral obligation. And your moral obligation stems naturally from your aims. Like once...
Yeah.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great.